language arts from their performance a year ago. We also had 53 schools that improved in their math performance since spring of 2019 from last year. We had 60 schools that improved in science performance overall from the year 2016 to 19. So since last year we had improvement, and overall we have seen an improvement by 60 schools. 66 schools improved in social studies over the past year. 8 to 9 demographic groups improved their performance in math and science. 8 to 9, so 8 in math, 9 in science, improved their performance. We also want to do a shout out for Golda Meir, Milwaukee German Immersion, Cooper School, Maryland Montessori. All of these 4 schools outperformed the state average in English language arts, math, science, and social studies. Our story, though, overall for the district is that we have seen slight declines in the performance in language arts in the district. We have seen that we have several of our groups, our Asian students, our English learners, and are not economically disadvantaged, have continued to improve for 3 years running. If we look by grade level at the Wisconsin Forward results, we can see that in grade 7, we are at our highest performance, and we have seen in several of our grade levels stability or improvement. If we look at mathematics, we have held steady or have had very slight improvement. Since 2016, we have had steady growth in mathematics. It is small, but we continue to see growth. Again, we had 53 schools that improved in math performance. We had 6 schools that had higher percentages of proficient and advanced than the rest of the state. And we had several of our demographic groups. You will recall in your packet there were demographic charts that were color-coded so that you could see green was improvement, yellow stayed the same from the previous year, or the red if there was a slight decline. If we look over the grade levels, we are looking that 3rd grade was our highest performing in math, and that there's been slight ups and downs in math performance by grade level. If we look at science, all demographic groups except 2 were improving in this area. So this is very good news. We had 7 schools that outperformed the rest of the state in science. If we look at science by grade level, and remember this is only at 4th grade and 8th grade, we have seen continually increasing scores. We see an increase in both 4th and 8th grade. One of the things to note is our curriculum and instruction team noted that they've been working with science teachers recently to increase literacy skills with nonfiction science text, increased awareness of higher depth of knowledge questions, and making sense of science grant has been in place for the last 4 years, and they believe that these things have impacted science performance. In social studies, all but 2 groups improved this past year, and we have 13 schools that had higher percentage of students proficient and advanced than the state. We can see that the 4th and 8th grade, again, there's not a lot of variability, but as we are looking at that, grade 4 has been in a somewhat of an upward trend, and then we saw a slight dip this year. Social studies has adopted new standards in 2018, so we are currently working to support teachers to meet the new expectation of those state standards. If we now move to high school, we are excited to say that 9 schools improved in English language art performance on ACT Aspire and DLM, remembering that's the 9th and 10th grade assessment. And the percentage of students performing proficient and above on ACT Aspire Math improved in 2019, as well as 13 demographic groups. 17 schools improved in math performance from last year to this year. If we look to the ACT, we had 12 schools that improved in language arts performance from last year to this year, and 6 in math. We also looked at the percentage of students performing proficient and above on ACT Science improved, and also in 9 demographic groups. And our shout out is to Carmen South, Hmong American Peace Academy, King International Baccalaureate, and Ronald Reagan High School, because they exceeded the state average on one or more subjects tested by ACT this year. If we are looking at the data, you can see by grade level, this is English Language Arts, that the turquoise is the advanced, the purple is proficient, the golden is basic, and the orange is below basic. The gray is not tested. This is an area of focus for us to increase test participation. This is the first year ACT Aspire will be part of the state report cards that will be coming out in mid-November. So we understand the importance of having all of our students taking these assessments. In math, you can see the results again here. The percentage of looking at Aspire, 17 schools improved math. 5 groups are an upward trend for the past 2 years. 6 of our schools improved math performance on the ACT from last year to this. And on Aspire, 2 schools performed above the state average. This moves us to next steps. Looking at data is important, but using the data for next steps is critical. So the first slide is looking at how will we be supporting teachers and schools. The first is our Ambitious Instruction 2.0. We aligned that our school improvement plans were aligned to the strategies outlined, and schools have identified strategies in their plan for reading, writing, and math. We have teachers and administrators that are from our comprehensive support and improvement schools. They've been attending Saturday workshops. They were here last Saturday, and they will be here this coming Saturday. And they have been reviewing this data in a cohort fashion so that they're looking at 3rd grade to 4th grade and talking about formalizing their instructional strategies in other breakout sessions. We have the schools, as I mentioned, selecting their school improvement strategies based on their data. We have school leaders that are being trained in how to observe in classroom to see that is ambitious instruction strategies, are they being implemented, and can administration be able to give staff feedback? There are additional professional development opportunities for teachers on the selected strategies that are available to address the school's needs, daytime as well as evening sessions. And all district PD days will be devoted to ambitious instruction and school improvement strategies. Data is also important for our students and our families. One of the things that we have done is work with parent coordinator participation during Saturday workshops. So what we are trying to do is to make understanding of assessments a way to better communicate with parents. We have created parent guides at each grade level that are available on the MPS website so that parents understand the assessments their children are taking, what they're taking, how much time they're spending on assessment, and they can be better informed as to when assessments will occur. We're working with the Parent Advisory DAC around ambitious instruction and ways parents can support students at home. Schools share data and goals with parents at school-based Title I meetings, and parent strategies are in place to help young learners at home that are on the MPS website and the mobile app, so that at our very earliest prior to state testing, we are helping our students embed knowledge and skills. That's our presentation. We'd be glad to entertain any questions.
Members of the committee, do you have questions that you would like to ask? Director Woodward? Director Woodward?
Oh, you're so quiet, I couldn't hear you. Okay, one of the questions that I have is like, can we get a list of those schools, like the 9 schools, the 17, and the ones that have exceeded expectations of
Absolutely.
that?
Director
Those?
Baez, Director Woodward, absolutely.
I have attended 2 summits this week. One was the youth summit at Herb Halden, and I was at the one United Way today, and students of all were there. And I read most of the things posted all the way around the wall. And I just like to know, most of them are saying the same thing. They don't have people who are interested in them. They don't believe they can learn, or they're telling certain things about different things negative that they are saying to them and things. What, I guess what are we going to do to try to counteract some of these things the youth are saying about what they're experiencing in the schools? And so, and I believe that too would have a direct impact on schools' improvement if we're not addressing the issues that the children experience and they experience because they are in the classroom. So, and I think they got whole sheets and sheets of paper. I don't know where they're taking them after they collect them, but I think it's something that we need to be looking at when we're making decisions to try to see what is going on in school with the type of teachers that are don't have the interest of the children, students.
Chair Baez, members of the committee. One of the things that we have in the 5 priorities for success is improving district and school culture. That is something that we are embedded to make sure happen. We're doing work around culturally responsive teaching and pedagogy. We are offering PD on a daily basis in those areas, and those are some of the areas that we want to focus on. But also, we're listening at student voice as well, bringing young people in to hear what they have to say and working through just that. I'm on a daily basis receiving emails and various things, letters from young people, and we are working with our staffs around that and around that whole piece with ambitious instruction, with the restorative practices as well, and all of those kinds of things rolled in to meet the needs of our students as well as our staff that we work with on a daily basis. We have some quality of care type of things that we are going to be rolling out. That's as a part of ambitious instruction, and we're going to be sharing with you on the 16th about some of the things, what the teachers are to do, what the administration should be doing, and what students should be doing, as well as what we want our parents to be doing. So a lot of those things, with everyone working together, we are going to be able to solve some of those issues that may occur.
Yeah, and I believe we're trying to do the best that we can. However, regardless of how much we do from this level, the top level, to improve conditions in the school based on what the students are saying, how it's always going to be people that are not going to adhere to anything you put out there. And so, what type of thing are we going to put in place to get accountability, to see that the children are getting what they need to advance, to be able to learn? And that's just something, I don't know, but I think we need to be looking at how is there going to be some accountability when our children are not performing and what's going on in those classrooms, why they're not performing. Am I clear?
Chair Baez and members of the committee, that is a part of what we're going to roll out and share with you. Is already out there, but going to share with you how everyone is held accountable. All of those factors that I just talked about, the students are held accountable, the staff is held accountable, the administration is held accountable, parents are held accountable. So we're looking at all of that around the accountability lens to make sure that everyone is held accountable and have a focus of what we are actually working on. So that is in progress, and we are working through that process as well. But there are there's protocol around accountability, and those measures are in place every single day of the school year.
Other board members? Yeah. Director Peterson?
Yeah, I'll comment on what Director Woodward said. I agree that the relationship between student and teacher is fundamental for learning, whether it's a 3-year-old or a 20-year-old, actually for adult learners as well. And I think one example that we could draw on that I've heard positive reports on, and this comes from one of the community schools at JMAC, is they have a very active youth council at JMAC. And in fact, they've presented here in the past. And they surveyed the students, the students surveyed their students, found some of the same things that Director Woodward was saying. And then they actually put together an 8-point program they thought could improve the instruction. And part of it was challenging the teachers in terms of attitudes and trying to build better relationships with teachers. And there were some joint meetings between students and teachers. And from what I could tell from the students, they felt it was very productive. And I'm not saying that's easy to duplicate, but I think it is true that students have a lot of wisdom. They also have to have some take responsibility. I mean, the other thing I'll say just about the community school model as it I think ultimately will impact test scores is when we have wraparound services to help students, when we hopefully have full art, music, FIED and librarians in the schools. Those things will both increase attendance because kids like that, plus many of those things are connected to increasing kids' academic achievement as well. So it's a complicated, but you really have to look at it as a whole process in terms of different factors that affect students. But certainly I would say relationships between the students and teachers is key, and then between the principal and the teachers, et cetera, et cetera. Those are very important.
Director Simpson?
So I'm in agreement with everything Director Woodward and Director Peterson have said, and I think it is just also worth putting out there all the time how it's, I hate, to just kind of change that perspective of how our students aren't failing, but rather the politicians who have failed our students by continuing to underfund education in a way that allows our students to be underserved and under-resourced, and allows for that unequal distribution of academic resources from our district to districts that surround us. So I think it's just always worth pointing out when we look at data, to kind of put that out there. And, I know we're looking at that budget and trying very hard to make sure that we give our students everything that we can. But I know, over the years, we've just been, our kids have been underserved. So it's worth noting. I also think that, a piece of that is being able to attract and retain quality teachers. I know that's something that we're working very hard to do. I think that plays into it. I think that having students beyond things like, and I'm sorry, I apologize, I forget what the School Governance Council is now called, school engagement committees. Yes, so I think that having students be a part of that is something that could be a goal for schools, because I do believe that student voice is important. They feel empowered and invested in their schools. And then I guess just a question then would be the ambitious instruction PD. What percentage of that or what part of that will focus on that classroom environment and school culture?
Administration?
Chair Bias, members of the committee, I'm actually, what we're going to do, actually it's already rolled out there. We're going to be going over it on the 16th, but I'm going to have Dr. Holliday to lay out the percentage of how much of that is around student engagement. Dr. Holliday?
Thank you. Chair Baez, members of the committee, Jeremiah Holliday, Interim Chief Academic Officer. Part of the work as it relates to our ambitious instruction plan 2.0 is as we begin to look at the reading, writing, and mathematics, the focus is how do we begin also to assist educators in the classroom management process. Majority of the work that we are focused on is the art around teaching, because nothing replaces good solid teaching, and that's from teaching from bell sound to belled end. And so that's the big push of the work, is to ensure that teachers are really teaching and teaching to grade level, and that the activities are certainly engaging. And that's part of that work around the ongoing professional development that is offered. It certainly will help circumvent some of those areas where we see that there are deficit and where there may be students who are not engaged, but the appropriate activities at the appropriate grade level to allow for that to take place.
Chair Baez and members of the committee, my belief is looking at it from 100%, and we're looking at basically like 20% of that, because we're just, the things that we had to, if we had to put a number or percentage to that, I would recommend that it's like 20% because of the things that we have spread out.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to pass the gavel to ask a question.
Director Baez?
Thank you. I look at the data, and in pre-SASE, we had some discussion about the data also, and the fact that we needed to talk more about how we're going to use the data. And you may recall that I was suggesting that on a board, when we get a report, it has to be more than the data. So you provide some sense of what you want to do, and then we ask questions and we talk about it, and that helps us all. When I look at the data, I am not very impressed with, the progress we made on some things. We made progress, but it's not a lot, okay? It's just like, when we look at the group distribution of the data, when I look at English language, learning and what have you, or when I look at English language arts, okay? And I see that Black students are still doing 30%, Hispanics, 10%, et cetera, and white students doing 40-something%, 45%. The gap is huge. It continues to be pretty large between these two groups. I still don't know how large that gap is by group in reference to the state standards. I mean, the state outcomes, okay? And that may be something that you need to share with us, because that's what we're going to be striving for, right? So we got two things here: striving to ensure greater equity of students of different groups to the internal group, inequities that we got to address, and that's an issue. And then to the state, how do we work towards that at the state level? So that's just on the data. The issue then, I'm working with the data and focusing on how we're going to use the data, which is a good thing. And I applaud the administration, because you continue to bring to us a good sense of that. Is what Director Woodward and Director Peterson alluded to. There's still the concern out there by students that when I talk to them, they sense to still lack the trust that their input is going to be heard, okay? That their input is going to result in some changes happening. And so part of what it would be good to know is, then how do we deal with that? Because if we have student input, parent input, and we measure that, and we have metrics, for seeing that, how do we make sure that their input is seriously concerned in the process of preparing the people that implement things, so that if there are teachers and staff that continue to do the same thing, when we do these, school leaders are trained to do the observations, okay? And they give feedback. Who do they give feedback to? And how is that feedback utilized so that we see the changes? So that when we report again, we report about how those changes are happening. Because when we go out to schools as school board members, and I can speak for myself, I continue to hear, that, well, I said this and this, but nobody heard me, okay? The message, the overall message of students continues to be generally the same. They're positive messages, not negative messages. They're just saying, what's happening with my voice in this process. And I think that's good. That's good education. It's good participatory processes. So parents, for example, that raise issues about what's happening in their school, what their kids are learning, they are contributing to that change that we want to see in the schools. But then they ask, how is that being used? Is that happening, okay? So when we make the observations, if we find that in a number of, let's say, school X, that a number of teachers in school X, didn't really appropriately implement the ambitious instructional model, okay? How do we deal with that in addition to the Saturday trainings, in addition to the monthly trainings that we may do, that we get some feedback to see how we together come up with ideas about how to deal with it, okay? How to work with that situation. I also notice in the data that because this sort of like inequity continues, over the years. So I look, for example, at 2016, but you were doing 2017, 2018, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever improvements are done, okay, those improvements have to be sort of like handled in such a way that if they're not dramatic, but they're sort of like at a level that we see, well, yeah, there's something happening here, but then we see ups, and then we see downs, then we see ups, and we see downs. How do we treat those areas where we see downs, okay? And how do we make sure that where we see ups, that continues? And the support systems that we provide those schools then follow that, okay? So that if another issue that has come to my attention is community school is doing great, okay? We have all this stuff happening. The data shows that we're doing okay, but then budget-wise or, support systems-wise, teachers and students are concerned that it doesn't show that they continue to get the support once they started doing that, okay? Unless you have schools where, certain folks, individuals, and parents make that continuously happen. They continue to put pressure, and work towards doing that. But in those schools where we continue to see that the data is suggesting an issue, how do we address that? So I would hope that in the future reports, that maybe we have a report on the data, okay, what the data is saying to us, but we also have sort of like a kind of reporting that says, we're going to take so many schools that show that their data doesn't move the needle much, okay? And we're going to do the following, to be able to do that. I know that we have had occasions here where we have done that with certain schools, okay? But I think that my colleagues and I are suggesting that these are good discussions. They help us rethink things. And you get feedback that we get feedback. So when I spoke to the groups, the students the other day, on Tuesday, on the student summit, there was a good feeling about these kids wanting to do all this stuff and everything else. But then when you talk to them individually, they said, where is this going? How do I know that my voice is being heard, okay? What are you guys going to do about it, okay? And it's legitimate, okay? So I just wanted to suggest that we think about that. So the data tells us something. What do we do with it? How do we deal with it? And, observations, how do we deal with them? That these observations are meaningful in that regards. And that if there are schools where the observations are telling us that there's an issue, how do we address it, okay? Well, thank you.
Administration?
Director Baez, members of the committee, thank you very much. In terms of your first point about GAPS data, State report cards will be coming out and being made public November 12th, and that is one of the 4 component parts of state report cards. So our data and our groups are actually compared to the state, so we'll be able to see that. Additionally, we will be receiving our National Assessment for Educational Progress data, and that will be available in public October 30th. And again, the gaps data in how our different demographic groups compare, because we're a trial urban district with 26 other council grade city schools. So we'll be able to see our demographic groups compared to other urban cities. So that data will be coming over the next couple of months as we have our regular report outs. Dr. Holliday may want to talk more about walks, but you ask about how we collect data and how that data is given back. Instructional walks is one way that other principals and other administrators provide data to the school. Internal walks that they provide information to teachers. One of the things that we are working on a great deal is using data for improvement. As I mentioned in our presentation, we had about 102 people last Saturday representing about 30 schools, and we have 39 schools teams coming this Saturday, and that is the focus of looking at the data compared to academic standards and proficiency levels, and learning strategies. We included things like culturally responsive teaching practices, co-teaching, using STAR data. We had academics presentations on scaffolding. We had academic presentations on how, if you are using a certain set of text materials, where are there resources available to you? Each of those, then we've asked schools, what are you going to do with that? And we will turn around 6 weeks from now and ask, is there evidence? So through our work with especially our comprehensive support and improvement schools, those are the schools that have been identified through the Every Student Succeeds Act. Those are the struggling schools. We have a very concentrated effort in supporting, working with the administration, being in the schools and supporting them to improve their systems and their school improvement planning around our district goals.
A follow-up question, just. Then let's say, how do we, that reporting will be great, that we get that additional data. But at some point, let's start talking about maybe reporting on how we are bridging the gap within groups, okay? So for example, if I look at the data, let's say in English language arts in 2018 to 19, and I see that white students are at 45%, okay, of performance, okay? But I see that English language learners are 4.8, okay? And that, special needs students are at 3.8, okay? That's a huge gap, okay? So how do we, as we address the issue of monitoring, going to schools and things like that, set goals internally to address the inequities of that, that disparity within groups, even when we look just at our own groups, okay? I mean, I'm not even talking about the state disparities. I'm talking about the inside. Surely, we're going to get there at some point, continuing to do that. But if we continue to see a disparity within groups, within our system, okay, and that data gets out there and suggests something about schools. And those folks that want to use that will use that argument to show, well, you're not even taking care of your own, sort of like disparities. How are you going to deal with that? Okay? So I would love to be able to see something like that at some point. How do we set goals for the disparity and bridge that disunity? Okay? Thank you.
Director Baez, members of the committee, You have focused on the other part of ESSA with our schools that have been identified for targeted support and improvement or additional targeted support and improvement. These are schools that subgroups have been identified that are performing below the all students and the subgroup in the state. Therefore, each of those schools that has been identified in their school improvement plan has to have targeted strategy, action steps, as well as measurable outcomes related to those specific demographic groups. And they include the economically disadvantaged, special education, English learners, and all of the race and ethnicity groups.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Chair Bias, members of the committee, another thing that we're looking at is the reason that we have set aside what administrators should do. We want it to be made clear what's the responsibility. What teachers should be able to do, we have made clear what the responsibilities are, and what parents as well as students, but also looking at young people, letting them know exactly where they are on STAR data, knowing their number, knowing where they need to move, and knowing how to self-advocate as well. And that's this whole thing around student voice and pushing that particular piece to make sure, but also making it open and available for the community, because what we have put out on the website under the family tabs, anyone that's providing wraparound services for young people know the assessments that they're taking and know what they should know and be able to do at that particular grade level. So we've put that out there, and and when it all works well, all of these parties that we have talked about have a stake in this: the administration, the teachers, the parents, the student, as well as the community. And that's that full circle of support that we're trying to wrap around young people, and drilling down on their STAR data, knowing what their numbers are, knowing where they need to move to in order to move and close the academic gap. Holiday?
Chair Baez, members of the committee, one of the things, Jeremiah Holliday, Interim Chief Academic Officer, one of the things that I really want to point out is, as you begin to take a look at the data that's before us, one of the things we did very intentionally with the ambitious instruction was to really disaggregate the data and really look at those areas based on standards, those skills that where students are really deficit, and looking at overall where do we really need to target our efforts. So part of this will come out in next week work session. When you begin to look at reading, let's say writing and mathematics, you will find that we pulled out the essential skills based on the data, as well as aligning those skills, looking at now what strategies do we need to teach to enable the students to be able to access those skills. And so building from there, as we begin to drill down, as we look at our professional learning opportunities that's going to be afforded to not only just teachers but leaders as well, what are those specific indicators so that and leaders can really support teachers in their learning and in their understanding. So really, the data certainly drives what we do within the work around academics. And also, when we begin to look at the assessments, specifically STAR in your PALS assessment, and really pushing, yes, the formative assessment, that information is used to determine, now, what's the next step for individual students. So really humanizing the data to really make informed decisions on how do we begin to move academic achievement for each individual child. So you would find that's how detailed we went as we began to really disaggregate to get the data and make informed decisions around what professional learning opportunities we need to afford for educators. And one other thing I would add is the instructional leaders and teacher leaders are really providing that support, that coaching support, whereas modeling side by side and supporting teachers in that vein as well.
Other questions by board members? Yeah. Director Woodward.
Yes, well, it was very fresh in my mind today, going to the Milwaukee Community School Partnership with children. And when children stand up and speak like they spoke there, and I heard things I've been hearing for years and years and years, that they are being addressed by teachers and things that they are being said to them. It was really heartbreaking for me to hear these things, and it's fresh in my mind because it was today. And then was it Monday too, and the other one too, and I'm getting the same repeated and too many students put on their feet the same thing. They're not respected. They don't treat like they can learn. And these type of behaviors is more than, well, I think as a teacher, we need to know these things on how to treat our students and teach them respect by exemplifying the respect yourself. And they will learn from what you say and do. So it's a little bit more than just talking to them, because teachers, and somewhere in training, they should get that, of the behavior in a classroom. And so I think we're going to have to start trying to find out more about what's going on in these classrooms. And I don't know where it's going to come from, but it's sad to hear a student stand up and say, well, without us, they wouldn't have a paycheck because we're the ones, the reason the money is coming. Yet, we're not being treated with decent and respect. To hear children stand up and talk that way, it's heartbreaking for me, because I just think it's awful.
Administration, any comments?
Chair Bias and members of the committee, I will say to you, that's heartbreaking to all of us. And by no mean will this administration allow that to happen to children. That's the reason we have student voice. We are constantly talking. We're pulling children out on large numbers around a summit for our young people. I'm going in, the staff of the Office of School Administration is going in on a daily basis, and we've made it very clear that we want everyone out in schools, supporting schools and working, and it's our goal to work together with school communities to ensure that all of our children are well and all of our children are safe and sound. And we're doing that on a daily basis. And we are, in any opportunity or any information that we gather, we're seeing what we can do to make life better in all 159 schools in this district.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Bosley. Any members of the public wish to make comments? Do we have any
Mr.
slips?
Chair, I'm sorry. You have a committee member that would like to speak,
Oh,
but we
I'm
have no
sorry,
further
I
slips
didn't
on
see
this
you.
item.
I was already ready to jump into the comments of the public. Go ahead, Director
That's okay.
Simpson.
I just had, so first of all, I appreciate the comments and remarks of my fellow board members, and also just the hard work that goes into preparing these reports and looking at that data and figuring out next steps. I just had a quick question. So with the school leaders who will be doing the walkthroughs, who are those people? Are they outside of the school, or are they people identified from within the building?
Chair Baez, members of the committee, as it relates to the instructional rounds, the groups, the principals are grouped within cohorts, and they are grouped by regions. And so those individuals will have an opportunity. The instructional rounds are for the leaders. It's not evaluating teachers, but it's for the leaders to really build their leadership capacity and really being able to reflect on the data with colleagues, and colleagues actually make some recommendations to the administrator on how they can continue to build capacity around, let's say specifically if it's strategies or if it's relationship building, they will be able to share that information with the leaders. And leaders coming from different buildings, so there will be a host site. And with the host site, they'll get a chance to go in and out of classroom, see what students are doing, what teachers are doing, and how they are responding to the work and the strategies that we'll put forth through the ambitious instruction plan.
Dr.
Chair
Bosley.
Baez and members of the committee, one of the other things is that our principals are grouped with various cohorts, such as you may have a group of bilingual principals together, you may have a group of Montessori principals together, a group of principals that may be in the arts or STEM focus, and they are focus driven. But also we ask that they take that information and duplicate that same information in their schools, where they will take their teachers, their paraprofessionals, or whomever to do one of those walks throughout the school. This is an opportunity for our administrators to reflect on great practice and exemplar practice so that they can duplicate that. So, and what we're doing with the principals is getting them from school to school so they can see different environments and things that work. It is not from an evaluative lens. It's on how we improve and how we get better. Every single school in the district has a unique feature and wants to see and praise those features and things that are happening in those schools, but also you get an opportunity as a leader, some things that you can add and take back to your school community.
Thank you. Other comments?
Thank you.
Accountability and efficiency, you have any comments? Okay,
Chair Bias, we have no comments. Thank you.
okay. Well, this was an informational report. We don't have any members of the audience that are going to speak. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Well, Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 2 is a report with possible action on academic standards. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Administration?
Chair Bias and members of the committee, in alignment with Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction requirements, this information item comes before you each year at this time and provide the academic standards adopted by the board, as well as those set forth by the Department of Public Instructions. At this time, Dr. Holliday is with me, and we are prepared to answer any questions in regards to this item.
Comments by board members? Well, before anything else, is there something else that the administration wants to add? Dr. Holliday? No?
Chair Bias, no.
Okay. Comments from the public?
Mr. Chair, we have no speaker slips on this item.
Accountability and efficiency, any comments? Good. Was there, in that case, Madam Chair, next item, please.
Mr. Chair, that was the last item on this meeting's agenda.
There be no further business before the committee. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Okay.
right, this meeting of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Director Baez.
Present.
Director Herndon.
Present.
Director O'Halloran.
Present.
Director Peterson.
Present.
Director Phillips. Director Simpson.
Present.
Director Taylor. Director Woodward.
Here.
Chair Miller.
Here.
We have 7 present.
Will the secretary please read the call of the meeting?
At the request of President Larry Miller, the following meeting is scheduled to take place in the auditorium of the Central Services Building, 5225 West Village Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for the consideration of the following items of business. Item 1, an update with possible action regarding preliminary survey data and action on the charge of the committee task force associated with Resolution 1920R-004 on schools our students deserve. And item 2, action on a request to retire to executive session for the purpose of preliminary consideration of specific MPS personnel matters and to consider the investigation of charges against specific persons, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon their reputation. In regards to item 2, as read, the board may retire to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes, section 19.85, parent 1, parent B, which allows a governing body to go into closed session for the purposes of dismissal, demotion, licensing, or discipline of any public employee over which the governing body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, or persons licensed by a board or commission, or the investigation of charges against such persons, or considering the grant or denial of tenure for a university faculty member, and the taking of formal action on any such matters, provided that the faculty member or other public employee or person's license is given actual notice of any evidentiary hearing which may be held prior to final action being taken, and of any meeting, a governing body of, or any meeting at which final action may be taken and pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent F, which allows a governing body to go into closed session for the purpose of considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories of disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data, or involved in such problems or investigations. The board may reconvene in open session to take action on matters discussed in closed session. Otherwise, the board will adjourn from executive session.
Thank you. Please note that Director Phillips has joined us. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for Spanish-speaking members of the audience. Thank you. Just as a reminder, Robert's Rules of Order dictates that all comments should be directed to the chair of the board. Also, any questions or requests, including those from the public, board members, or the administration, are to be directed toward the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. Please be respectful of the democratic process adhered to by the board. Each month, the Milwaukee Board of School Directors provides time for public input. For the safety of all and to ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone persisting in disrupting this process will be asked to leave or will be escorted from the meeting and are not, not allowed to return. Also, no one other than members of the board, the staff of the superintendent's office, the Office of Board Governance, and the Office of Accountability and Efficiency, and those who have been invited to present or participate in items of business will be allowed on stage before, during, or after meetings of the board and committees. Also, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda and items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting esb.milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Now let's begin. Madam Secretary, item 1.
Item 1 is an update with possible action regarding preliminary survey data and action on charge of the Community Task Force associated with Resolution 1920R-004 on schools our students deserve.
Does the administration, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. The administration recommends that the board decide how it wishes to proceed with this item relative to the charge of the Community Task Force associated with Resolution 1920R-004 on schools our students deserve.
Thank you. Does the administration wish to make comments?
Yes, President Miller and members of the board, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. This evening, I would like to provide an update regarding preliminary survey data as attached to this item. Also attached to is a draft of a document for the board's consideration regarding the charge of the Community Task Force associated with Resolution 1920R-004. And before I turn it over to the team to make some comments, I'm just reminded of a gentleman by the name of Mr. Flowers, who said if he had an opportunity, he would be here tonight, who takes the bus, but he's raising his grandson, great-grandson, Cameron, who attends Marvin Pratt, and he could not say enough great things about the teachers and staff over at Marvin Pratt, how they go the extra mile. They give him a call to see what to talk about Cameron's grades and support. I got called over to the table to talk with him, and I sat there and we went back and forth. It was just amazing, and he shared with me about not having transportation to be able to get back and forth, and how the school has reached out, and it's just an honor to have an opportunity to talk about schools our children deserve, and for him to share that. And he shared with me if he get an opportunity, he will be here tonight, and he might be en route. So if he do show up, I would like for him Mr. Flowers, to share his own story. But it's something that truly has touched me, and just to have that dialogue, and we continue to talk even after the presentation. So it's amazing, the things and the way that we're working and touching the lives of so many young people on a daily basis, and just giving adult family members, parents, grandparents an opportunity to talk about the school their children truly deserve. And with no further ado, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Eduardo Gavan, Regional Superintendent, and Mr. Chris Thiel, who's with us on this side tonight, to kind of talk through some items that we have. Team, if you would take it away.
Eduardo Galvan, President Miller, members of the board, Eduardo Galvan, Regional Superintendent. Thank you for being present. Just an update, as Dr. Posley said, we did, under the direction of the board, have a survey. At this time, over 25,000 people have taken that survey. One of the attachments has some of that data. The top chart goes over who took the survey, and it's very important for us to know that, obviously. One of our most important group is students, and students represent 43% of those who participated in taking the survey. Again, that survey is still open, so if anybody in the listening audience wants to take the survey, they can still do so. And then it details the other staff that took the survey, parents, community members, guardians, parents of former students, and business leaders and community members. That data was also presented to anybody that went to the listening sessions. Dr. Posley presented that to the members there. Many of you board members were present at those meetings. The second graph represents responses, and they're ordered in terms of somewhat to strongly agree, and some of the things that came out and was presented again during those listening sessions. Things such as library, art, music, physical education, certified teachers, and on down the list. That then led to our listening sessions. We had 4 listening sessions. Again, many of you were present. Dr. Posley described Mr. Flowers and his interaction there. There were many such interactions there. There were students there, there were family members there were community members there were staff members there, and they all had really rich conversations about schools our students deserve. And that data was gathered, and we are in the process of compiling that data to provide that as we move forward. From that, we then move into the administration or the board then just gave us a directive to move forward and start working on developing the task force. That is in process. Part of that is the charge, which is the second attachment that you have, and we will be needing that in order to move forward. The task force process is in the works, so to speak. We are waiting for the charge so that we can then finalize and confirm and invite those members to participate in our 4 task force meetings, which are scheduled. The Donovan Group did help the administration in the creation of that charge, which you have before you, and we look forward to hearing any questions regarding that.
Great. With you? No? No comments? All right. Board members, let's start with Director Peterson.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the summary. I too was at 2 of these meetings, the feedback sessions, and heard passionate concerns and praise both from parents. I listened to one parent who volunteers on a regular basis at the school of her 4th grader, and she felt that the teacher is working very hard. She was one who believed in smaller class sizes. She's in the classroom, and she felt that it was some classroom management things would be easier if there weren't so many students in the classroom. And she volunteers 4 times a week for at least 3 hours a day in the classroom. I was very pleased to have met her. In looking at the draft, I think it summarizes what we need. There's one thing that was left out, and I was wondering if there could be a added addition to it. It's under the specific duties. Maybe I misread it. So the specific duties, the community task force shall present the board a solution or set of solutions that, and then there's a list of things they are to consider. I didn't see, and I know it's implied, but I didn't see any reference that they should reflect on the results of the MPS survey and the feedback sessions. And I thought we might be able to sneak that in there because obviously we want them to reflect on those results and the survey and the feedback sessions. Now, maybe it's in there, but I didn't catch it in there, so.
But Director Peterson, you can make a motion to include that. That's
Okay.
your privilege and your right.
Okay, I'll make a motion to include that phrase, reflects the results of the MPS survey and the feedback sessions.
So you're proposing the whole document be
Well,
adopted?
you want me to propose the whole
You can
document?
do it at this point.
The
Yes,
old
since you're
document-
already working on language,
Tweaking
that's
it.
fine. Tweaking,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, I move the document with the addition of reflects the results of the MPS survey and feedback sessions.
All right, can I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And other comments before we take a vote on this or ask for public input?
We still have a motion. I wanted to make an additional comment.
Sure.
Different from the
I'm asking for, we're talking about the motion now, and we're going to get public comments. But, you know, people can make a motion at any time. So the motion is done, the second is done, now board comments. No? No
No, I have
comment?
a comment, but I have another motion to make.
Okay. Is it an amendment to this motion?
It could be an amendment to the motion, if you want, okay? Yeah. On the issue of membership of the community task force, I thought of I wanted to add some wording there that speaks to the issue of the diversity of the task force, okay? We need to start from very early, making sure that when we put groups out there that are helping us, these groups reflect the diversity of this district and the community. And so I want to urge that maybe we can add a bit of language there to the effect that the community task force shall consist of 16 to 30 voting members and shall be as diverse or should consist of diverse membership, okay? Something to that effect, okay?
Is that a friendly amendment?
That's a friendly amendment, absolutely.
Then that, please include that, Madam Secretary. Oh, the seconder also. Okay, she also. Okay, other comments? Yes, Director Phillips.
Thank you, President Miller. just had a question in terms of, I suppose the process more to Vice President Baez's point around the actual, I understand the letter is being sent to folks that we would like to charge to participate in the community task force. That's my first question. That's the audience. I'm seeing, for those listening, I'm seeing people nodding their heads that that is the audience. So my second question is, how are we determining, or whom is determining how this task force is coming together? Is that Ms. Mims Howell? She's listed as the support. It's not clear in the item, nor is it clear in this letter that's going out to community members, which is fine. I think that's why this meeting is here, so we can gain clarity on that.
President Miller, members of the committee, there is a whole team of individuals, everyone that's on, the three of us that are sitting here tonight, along with Jennifer Mims Howell, along with any board member that has come to the, well, board members are not making decisions, but on that, but the thing about it, anyone is invited to our meetings. However, so those individuals as well as myself, and Lauren Baker is the other individual that's at the table, and we have one other slot that we'll be filling very soon.
And then just one more follow-up.
Sure.
In terms of our relationship with the Donovan Group, how did that come to be in working with this resolution? Or perhaps not the resolution specifically, but in terms of drafting this communication, and are we going to continue to work with this group throughout this process?
President Miller, members of the board, the Donovan Group will provide services in terms of they helped with the charge. They will help with the task force in terms of leading them along on that charge, keeping them focused, making sure that the charge is being followed.
It sounds like having an external facilitator of these meetings is going to be really helpful, since it is a pretty important and specific charge. So thank you.
Director Peterson.
Just to comment on that, I know in working with Joe Donovan from the Donovan Group, he is, just in case other people don't know, that he has facilitated and worked with multiple school districts, not only in the state, but across the country. And the survey, sort of the pattern of the survey, the feedback sessions, and the task force is something that he has found successful in generating both input and then general support. Obviously, it is up to us, the school board, whatever we decide in the end. And as the task force charge says, it's we ultimately are the decision makers about what's prioritized, or how much, or when, or where, whatever.
Any follow-up, Director Phillips? None? Any other comments by board members?
Mr. Chair?
Oh, yes, Madam Secretary.
In reading the motion and understanding the friendly amendment relative to the diversity of the task force, it would be beneficial to add that the task force will be in compliance with Board Governance Policy 2.0 that outlines criteria for district advisory committees.
Thank you on that. And one of the things, let me just follow up for you, Director Phillips. One of the things that policy says is that as things proceed, the board president can review this work and bring issues back to the board while the task force is operating. If there's issues that come forward that board members want to raise, or the task force wants to raise. So it is written in the board policy. We have ability to intervene if there's issues. Okay. Director, Madam Secretary? Oh, I'm sorry.
Just as maker of the motion, I certainly accept that as a friendly amendment. I mean, it's, I don't know if I don't know if that's necessary, but I agree with us following the board policy.
And the seconder agrees with it also. Director Hernan. Any other comments? Do we have any public comments? Anyone, any speaker slips on this, Madam Secretary?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, there are no speaker slips on this item.
Okay, any follow-up comments that people want to make? If not, let's call the roll.
On Director Peterson's motion, seconded by Director Herndon, to approve the charge of the committee task force associated with Resolution 1920R-004 on schools our students deserve, as listed in the attachment to this item, and that there be additional language that demonstrates that the task force will also reflect on the results of the NPS survey and feedback results, and that the committee makeup is a diverse group reflective of the NPS student population and consistent with Board Governance Policy 2.0. I'm sorry, 2.10.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
On the motion as read, Director Baez.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Woodward.
Aye.
Chair Miller.
Aye.
That's 8 ayes, the motion passes.
Great. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 2 is action on a request to retire to executive session for the purpose of preliminary consideration of specific NPS personnel matters and to consider the investigation of charges against specific persons, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon their reputation. The board may reconvene in open session to take action on matters discussed in closed session. Otherwise, the board will adjourn from executive session. The recommendation is that the board determine how it wishes to proceed with this item.
At this time, I will entertain a motion to retire to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85(1)B, which allows a governing body to go into a closed session for the purpose of considering dismissal, demotion, licensing, or discipline of any public employee or person licensed by a board or commission, or the investigation of charges against any such person, or considering the grant or denial of tenure for a university faculty member and the taking of a formal action on any such matter, provided that the faculty member or the other public employee or person licensed is given actual notice of any evidentiary hearing which may be held prior to final action being taken, and of any meeting at which the final action may be taken, and pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851F, which allows a governing body to go into closed session for the purpose of considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories of disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigation. The board may reconvene in open session to take action on the matter discussed in closed session. Otherwise, the board will adjourn from executive session. So I'll entertain a motion at this
I
time.
move that we go into executive session.
Second.
Okay.
That's so simple, right?
Do any board members have comments, or the administration have comments? Not seeing any. Please call the roll.
On the motion to retire to executive sessions as outlined by the chair of the board. Director Baez.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Woodward. President Miller.
Aye.
That's 8 ayes, the motion passes.
Thank you. Now we
We
proceed.
will note the time.
Okay, please note the time.
So noted.